Chapter 11. Viking Explorers. The truth behind the Voyages. The summer raiding season is in full swing, but not all Vikings are raiders. Some are explorers, driven by curiosity, desperation, or greed to venture into unknown waters and discover new lands. You're about to join one of these expeditions. Not to England or Ireland for raiding, but west, far west, into the open Atlantic where, rumour has it, there are lands rich with resources and free of enemies. The expedition is being led by a man named Floki, an experienced navigator who's made this journey twice before. He's been to Iceland, a massive island far to the west where a small Norse community has established itself. And beyond Iceland, even further west, he's heard rumours of another land, Greenland, they're calling it, though the name is apparently optimistic marketing rather than accurate description. Why Greenland? You ask as the ships are being prepared. Floki laughs. Because Eric the Red, who discovered it, wanted settlers, and who would want to settle in a place called Land of Ice and Desolation, so he called it Greenland. Makes it sound inviting. This is Viking exploration in a nutshell. A mixture of genuine discovery, entrepreneurial deception, and desperate need for new land, because that's the underlying reality. Scandinavia is running out of good farmland. The population has grown, and there's simply not enough productive land to support everyone. Younger sons who won't inherit their father's farms face a choice: raid, trade, or explore. Many choose exploration, seeking new lands where they can establish their own farms and settlements. Iceland was discovered this way about 50 years ago, and it's already filling up with Norse settlers. Now attention is turning even further west. The expedition consists of 3 ships, each carrying about 30 people. Not just warriors, but families, men, women, children, thralls, livestock, tools, seeds. This isn't a raiding expedition, it's a colonization attempt. You're on Floki's ship, which also carries his wife Gisela and their 3 children. Other families are distributed among the 3 vessels. The goal is to reach Greenland, assess whether it's suitable for settlement, and if so, establish a foothold. The journey begins in early June, when the weather is most favorable. Even so, crossing the North Atlantic in open boats is extraordinarily dangerous. These long ships are technical marvels, but they're still small wooden vessels facing one of the world's most treacherous oceans. The first stage is reaching the Faroe Islands, archipelago about 2 days' sail northwest of Norway. This is a known route, relatively safe, and the islands provide a place to rest and resupply. The Faroes are barren, windswept places, but they've been inhabited by Norse settlers for decades. Small communities of farmers and fishermen eke out livings on these rocky islands. You spend 2 days there, repairing minor damage to the ships, taking on fresh water, and waiting for favorable winds. The local settlers share news. Several ships have been lost in recent years attempting the Iceland crossing. The ocean is unforgiving. On the 3rd day, Floki decides the weather is acceptable. The 3 ships set sail for Iceland. This is where the journey becomes truly dangerous. Iceland is roughly 500 miles from the Faroes, across open ocean with no landmarks. If you get lost, you'll sail until your supplies run out, then die. Navigation is entirely based on experience and observation. Floki uses the sun's position during the day and stars at night when they're visible. He watches wave patterns and bird flights. He has a sense, developed over years at sea, of where land is. There are no maps in the modern sense, no compasses, no GPS, just accumulated knowledge passed down through generations of sailors and Floki's own previous experiences. For 3 days you see nothing but ocean. The ships stay relatively close together for safety, but in rough weather they're sometimes separated by miles. You hope you don't get lost, hope the other ships are still out there somewhere. The conditions are brutal. The ships are open to the elements. When waves break over the sides, everyone gets soaked. There's no way to dry off. You're constantly wet, constantly cold, even in summer. Seasickness is rampant. Half the people on board are vomiting regularly. The children are miserable, crying and sick. The livestock penned in the middle of the ship are terrified, adding their own smells and sounds to the misery. Food is dried fish and hard bread, eaten cold because there's no way to cook. Water is rationed carefully. You're always thirsty, always hungry, always uncomfortable. On the 4th day, someone spots birds. Lots of them. Seabirds that nest on land. This means Iceland is close. Sure enough, several hours later, you see it. A dark smudge on the horizon that gradually resolves into mountains, massive mountains, some capped with glaciers even in summer. Iceland. The ships make for the coast. and as you get closer, the island reveals itself. It's huge, much larger than you expected, and it's a landscape unlike anything you've ever seen. Glaciers descend from mountains to the sea. Black sand beaches stretch for miles. Steam rises from vents in the ground where geothermal activity heats water to boiling. In some places, the ground itself seems to be on fire, volcanic activity creating an otherworldly landscape. Floki navigates to a settlement on the southwest coast where he has contacts from previous voyages. This is one of the first Norse settlements in Iceland, established maybe 30 years ago by early pioneers. The settlement is small, perhaps 50 people, living in turf houses that blend into the landscape. They're struggling. The growing season is short, the soil volcanic and poor in many places. They survive on fishing, raising hardy sheep, and occasional trade with ships from Norway. But they're free. They own their land outright, not beholden to any jarl or king, and for many of them, that freedom is worth the hardship. You spend a week in Iceland, resting, repairing the ships, and gathering information about Greenland. Several people in this settlement have been there. They describe it as even harsher than Iceland, though with some fertile fjords on the southwestern coast where settlement is possible. Eric the Red has a farm there, one settler tells you. He was outlawed from Iceland for killing, and decided to try his luck even further west. He's been trying to attract more settlers, promising good farmland and opportunities. Is it really good farmland, you ask? You ask? The settler shrugs. It's land. Whether it's good, that depends on what you're comparing it to. Compared to Norway? No. Compared to nothing? I suppose it looks pretty good. This honest assessment tempers some of the enthusiasm in the expedition. But there's no turning back now. You've come this far. The journey from Iceland to Greenland is another 900 miles across open ocean, the longest and most dangerous leg of the voyage. You depart Iceland with mixed feelings, leaving the relative safety of known land for the uncertainty of the Western Ocean. For 2 days, the sailing is manageable. Then the weather turns. A storm rolls in from the north, bringing winds that howl like living things and waves that tower above the ship. This is what sailors fear most. An Atlantic storm with nowhere to run, no shelter, just endless ocean, and the fury of the sea. The ships are separated almost immediately. One moment you can see them, the next they're gone, swallowed by waves and driving rain. You're alone now. One small wooden shell in an immensity of grey water and darker grey sky. For 12 hours, the storm rages. The ship climbs massive waves, crests them, and plunges down the other side. Water pours over the sides continuously. Everyone bails frantically, scooping water and throwing it overboard, even though more immediately replaces it. If the ship takes on too much water, it will become unstable and capsize, or simply sink, dragged down by the weight of water in the hull. Either way, everyone will die. In water this cold, hypothermia kills in minutes. Children are crying, terrified. Adults are pale, many praying to gods, making desperate promises if only they'll survive this. The thralls bail mechanically, too exhausted to show fear. Floki is at the steering oar, fighting to keep the ship pointed into the waves. If a wave catches the ship sideways, it will roll. His arms must be screaming from the strain, but he doesn't let go, doesn't stop, literally holding everyone's lives in his hands. The livestock are panicking. A goat breaks free from its pen and slides across the deck before someone tackles it. A sheep goes overboard, disappearing into the churning water without a sound. You're bailing with a wooden bucket. Your arms beyond exhaustion, operating on pure survival instinct. Scoop, throw, over and over. Knowing that if you stop, if everyone stops, you all die. Finally, mercifully, the storm begins to subside. The waves slowly get smaller. The wind drops from a scream to a roar, to merely a strong blow. The rain lessens, then stops. You emerge into an eerie calm. The ocean is still rough, but compared to what you just experienced, it feels peaceful. The sky begins to clear, revealing late afternoon sun. You look around at your fellow travelers. Everyone is soaked, exhausted, traumatized. Gisela is clutching her children, all of them crying. Several people are injured from being thrown around during the storm. One man has a broken arm, the bone jutting at an unnatural angle, and the other 2 ships. There's no sign of them. You scan the horizon in all directions. Nothing, just ocean. They might have survived and been blown off course. They might have sunk. There's no way to know. Floki makes a decision. We continue west. If the others survived, they'll continue too. We'll meet at Greenland or not at all. The voyage continues. You're now down to one ship, one group of 30 terrified people in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, hoping you're heading in the right direction. For 3 more days, you sail west. Supplies are running low. The fresh water is nearly gone. Food is rationed to bare minimums. The livestock that survived the storm are butchered, and the meat distributed, providing fresh food but also ending any hopes of bringing breeding stock to Greenland. Just when despair is setting in, when people are beginning to whisper that you're lost, that you'll die at sea, someone spots land. Greenland. It appears first as mountains, white with glaciers, massive and imposing. As you get closer, you see the coast, fjords cutting deep into the land, cliffs dropping sheer to the sea, and everywhere, ice. Flauk. Navigate south along the coast, looking for Eric the Red's settlement. The landscape is forbidding. This doesn't look like farmland. It looks like the edge of the world, frozen and hostile. Finally, after sailing for most of a day along the coast, you spot smoke. A settlement. You've made it. Eric's Fjord, as it's called, is a deep inlet with relatively sheltered water. At the head of the fjord, tucked against mountains, is a cluster of turf houses. Maybe a dozen families, perhaps 60 people total, making up the entire Norse population of Greenland. Your ship is greeted with excitement and relief. New settlers are desperately needed. The community is barely hanging on, and more people mean more labor, more skills, better chances of survival. Eric the Red himself comes down to greet the ship. He's a massive man with a wild red beard, legendary for his strength and temper. He was outlawed from Iceland for killing several men in a feud, so he sailed west and discovered Greenland. Now he's trying to build a new society here, free from the laws and feuds of the old countries. Welcome, he booms, arms spread wide. Welcome to Greenland. The finest land in all the north. Rich soil, abundant fishing, and most importantly, no jarls or kings to tell us what to do. His enthusiasm is infectious, but you notice that the existing settlers look thin, worn. This finest land is clearly taking its toll. Over the next days you learn the reality of Greenland settlement. The growing season is incredibly short, maybe 2 months. Only the hardiest crops survive. Barley, barley, some root vegetables, and hay for livestock. The volcanic soil of Iceland was poor, but at least it was soil. Here, much of the ground is frozen year-round. The small patches of actual earth must be carefully cultivated. Fishing is indeed abundant. The fjords teem with fish, seals, and whales. This is the primary food source. Without fish, the settlement would starve. There's almost no wood. A few stunted birch trees grow in sheltered valleys, but nowhere near enough for building or fuel. Everything must be built from turf and stone, and driftwood from the beach is jealously hoarded for essential tasks. Winter is 8 months long. 8 months of darkness, cold and isolation. The fjord freezes. No ships can come or go. You're completely cut off from the outside world. And speaking of ships, the other 2 vessels from your expedition never arrive. They were lost in the storm. 60 people, gone. Families destroyed, children drowned, all because of one bad storm. This is the reality of Viking exploration. For every successful settlement, there are dozens of ships that never reach their destination. For every Eric the Red who survives and thrives, there are hundreds who died trying. But the ones who survive, their names are remembered. Their deeds are sung about. They become legends. Eric and the other settlers share stories of exploration further west. Some claim there's more land beyond Greenland, visible on clear days from the western shore. Maybe another island. Maybe a continent. Who knows? A few years from now, Eric's son Leif will sail west and discover Vinland, part of North America, becoming the first European to set foot in the New World. But that's in the future. Right now, the focus is just on surviving in Greenland. You're assigned a plot of land and help building a turf house. The construction is labor-intensive. Blocks of turf are cut and stacked like bricks, creating thick walls that provide some insulation. The roof is timber, precious driftwood, covered with more turf. It's essentially living in a grass-covered bunker, but it's shelter. Your first Greenland winter is a revelation of suffering. By October, the sun barely rises. By November, it doesn't rise at all. You live in perpetual twilight, then darkness, for months. The cold is beyond anything you experienced in Norway. It's a penetrating cold that no amount of fire seems to warm. You wear every piece of clothing you own, layered until you can barely move, and you're still cold. Food supplies dwindle alarmingly. The fish caught and dried in summer must last until spring. You eat less and less. Hunger becomes a constant companion. scurvy begins to affect people. Without fresh vegetables or fruit, vitamin C deficiency causes gums to bleed, teeth to loosen, old wounds to reopen. People die from this, their bodies simply unable to function without proper nutrition. One woman gives birth in January, during the darkest, coldest part of winter. The baby is born healthy, but the mother develops a fever and dies 3 days later. The baby survives only another week. There's not enough food, not enough warmth. The community buries them both in frozen ground. Another 2 graves added to the growing cemetery. This is the cost of exploration. The sagas tell of brave men discovering new lands. They don't mention the women who died in childbirth in frozen turf houses, the children who starved, the families that simply disappeared, their settlements abandoned, their bones scattered by animals. By the time spring arrives and the sun finally returns, the Greenland settlement has lost 8 people to winter. 8 out of 90, nearly 10% mortality. And this is considered a good year. You survive, but you're changed. Thinner, weaker, more worn. You've added Greenland to your list of places where you've suffered and endured, and you realize something. Viking exploration isn't romantic adventure. It's desperate people fleeing crowded homelands, willing to risk everything for a chance at land of their own. It's families dying in the attempt. It's survivors barely holding on in places that humans weren't really meant to inhabit. The sagas will remember Eric the Red as a great explorer. They'll sing of Leif Erikson discovering Vinland. They'll celebrate the boldness of Vikings who sailed into unknown waters. But you've lived it. You know the truth. Viking exploration is slow-motion tragedy, a string of failures punctuated by occasional success, all of it built on human suffering and an almost pathological refusal to give up. As summer returns and ships begin arriving from Iceland with supplies and new settlers, you make a decision. You're leaving Greenland. You've seen enough. You're going back to Norway, back to a place where the sun shines and trees grow, and you don't spend 8 months in darkness and hunger. Eric the Red doesn't understand. This is opportunity, he insists. In Norway, you're nobody. Here, you can own land, build something. But you've realized that some opportunities aren't worth the cost. Some lands should be left unexplored. Some frontiers are better left uncrossed. You board a ship heading back to Iceland, then eventually Norway. As Greenland recedes into the distance, you feel a profound relief. You survived Viking exploration, but just barely, and you'll never ever do it again.